I'm Lexy Davis, a love embodiment coach who helps people create a love that feels like home, and I'm here to bring more romance and playfulness into the world. I'm also an international retreat host, vibe curator, and human connector. I serve people through my business, Alive to Enjoy, and this podcast where I invite guests from around the world to sprinkle their wisdom and expand your perspective so you can create the deepest love you possibly can reach in this lifetime. I also want you to live the most joyous life, whatever that looks like to you, and I hope that this slice of the internet brings you lots of smiles and helps you keep your heart open. Thank you for choosing Heart Snuggles to be in your ears each week, and I'm so glad you're here with me. Welcome, Heart Snugglers. Hope you're having a beautiful morning or evening, depending when you're listening. And today I brought a beautiful woman who I recently found, and she's just such a light, and I'm so excited to share her with you guys. So would love if you just introduced yourself to everyone listening.
Hello, hi, Lexy, and all those who are receiving this, whenever you are receiving this. My name is Katharina Grace. On Instagram, I'm Portal to Grace. And what I do is, or bring into the world at the moment, is guiding women deeper into their relationship to God through really restoring that relationship and shifting from sourcing our identity from our achievements and how much we do and what we do to the identity of the beloved and the daughter of God and all that comes from rooting into that identity. And specifically union as that most foundational relationship, so we can enter union with the partner, with the beloved, from having this foundational relationship to God.
So good. Yay. Okay, so the first question of the podcast is, what was the last random act of kindness someone did for you?
All the time at the moment. I had a motorbike accident a month ago, so I broke my foot. And so I'm constantly every day receiving at the moment a lot of acts of kindness. So I would have to what's the most recent? I think every time my delivery driver actually walks the extra steps to give it to me to the door, because I'm putting my foot out and I'm like, I cannot walk, sorry, I can't come to the door. And that's when they're always extra supportive, extra helpful. And I think yesterday what moved me very deeply was when it's my birthday next week and I messaged a dear sister of mine and I was like, just gonna bounce ideas back and forth what we're gonna do. And her response was, it's already taken care of. Your birthday's already planned. You don't have to do anything. So that was a deeply moving act of kindness, of just really seeing, putting in an incredible circle of women I have. And yeah.
I love that, being taken care of and just so loved by your people. So sweet. Oh, beautiful. And next question is, what is a more shameful memory you have around relationships from your past?
That's a good one. I think it's those moments where I look back and I realize I could have been kinder, or where my behavior was hurtful, where upon integration and reflection and sitting with the deeper layers of integrating at the end of a relationship, really realizing, and specifically my last one, realizing where the very things I desired from the masculine, like leadership and for him to show up more in his masculine, that there's been behavior on my end coming from me that have actually prevented that. And of course, there's always a co-creation that we're in, but really seeing there's a lot for me to look at. And that's not always very beautiful, memories, obviously, to think of. And I wouldn't say shameful, because I don't believe in the energetics of shame and guilt, as that's just unnecessary for us to be with. It's more so reflection, recognition, and knowing what can I do better, and having also compassion. I think big part of the healing journey is compassion with ourselves. That's when the true integration happens, is when we're holding these parts with just so much love instead of guilt or shame.
Yeah, we're so hard on ourselves, and it just makes me sad, because I feel like a lot of us carry things that it's just so human and we forget that. And so that's why, I just try to bring light that we all do these things and make these silly choices sometimes, but we can reflect and hopefully do something different next time. And even if we don't, we can still be compassionate and hopefully try again.
Yeah.
So I'd love to know where your relationship with God began. Have you always been connected?
Definitely been a journey. I didn't grow up with God being mentioned, practice brought into my field as a child or growing up at all. So this was a relationship I began opening to and forming throughout my, I would say, kind of deeper opening outside of the conditioned way of living, which started around, I would say, maybe 10 years ago. And from being in law and going to law school and kind of that path and transitioning into opening to what else is available and opening to more of what I would call new age path with all of the practices and tools and crystals and things and cards and deities and all the things, and exploring very, very different paths and lineages, Kundalini, Tantra, Bhakti, which is devotional chanting, and many, many sub-lineages along the way. I came to, at some point, realize that I'm on a direct path to God, meaning the less stuff there is, the more clear that connection becomes. And the less external things I rely on, the more I feel the truth of that relationship and God's voice in my system and my heart coming through my body more clearly, so much more clearly. And that was a journey to come to this place of, and it's not making the past wrong or the things I did wrong. It's seeing this as just such a beautiful, wholesome, needed journey to now come to a place where it's just me and God. There's nothing else. There's no, and I'm touching on like what we often hear in New Age spirituality is like the manifestation piece on like, you have to exactly know what you're doing. These are the steps. These are the tools and equipment you need to do. And you have to be very clear, because if you're not clear, the universe doesn't know what to deliver to you, and so on. And opening more deeply to God, I realized how there is already a perfect divine plan. How I simply, it's not me who decides what's happening. I can have preferences. I can bring that into my prayer. I can ask God for guidance. I can tell God my deepest wishes and desires. And ultimately, there's a piece of submission to higher will. And I know this can be a bit like activating for some, because it's deeper than surrender. Surrender is like, oh yeah, I live my life with God and I trust there's a plan. But submission is, your will goes first. Your will before my will. And that is a journey, and I think a very, very tender and deep journey for us to come to. And yeah, I'm just going to stop here and see how we go from here.
Yeah, it's so hard hearing the word submission and obedience. I think that word still triggers me a little. And especially as a woman, like it wasn't safe for a lot of us to give that power away, that trust away so deeply, to know that like there is someone that is looking out for us even better than we could for ourselves. And so what kind of brought you to trust in that?
It's clearing any distortions, any wounding that we have, any conditioning around the masculine principle and the father principle. And I think this is the most, like, we're already at the core of this the entire God conversation, is our willingness to say, this is a relationship that is different than the relationship to any man I ever had, including my father. And this is completely different. And just to clarify, when I speak about God, it's not a religious punitive force where you have to be a certain way and only then God will show up for you. This is religious distortion. But I'm in a relationship with God. And that relationship always changes. That relationship always evolves. That relationship always deepens and reveals new pieces. And it's in our willingness to say, okay, I'm putting the past aside and I'm opening to this force, this presence, who wants nothing more than to be in relationship with me, who's so patient. And there already comes in, it's like the most loving father. And again, this is triggering if we have stuff with our father, with our biological father. But it's a different, most loving, embracing father. It's like the image that comes is it's the father that we all as little girls wish to have, who's so patient, who's so embracing, who lets his daughter run off and explore all the things and do all the things, even if they're not of his essence, even if it's completely going into a different direction. And he's still there, so loving, so open, nothing changed within him, no contraction. And this is where the religious distortion comes in of like, he will punish me if I do something bad, whatever that is. And that is not true. And this is where my work comes in of restoring, redefining relationship to God, is realizing we all have that. I have that too. I have this part too. Even though I'm in practice with God every day, I'm in space with God every day, I'm in prayer every day, I still have this part when something happens that says, maybe you fucked up somewhere. Or did you do something wrong that this happened? So there is still that subtle somewhere that was sometimes it's very far away, sometimes it's very close. And that is to normalize. It's part of human nature to see God as this big punitive force who's just waiting for you to do something wrong. And again, that is religion. And that's not the relationship we want to cultivate, right? So
yeah, it's so deep in me too. Like as soon as something goes wrong, I'm like, why am I being punished? Or I'm always punished. Like those thoughts, I'm like, and I have to catch myself, because it can be like, it really shrinks me and makes me close and drops me into fear and into not good enough, and like all these very old archaic beliefs and programs. So I really love the constant reminder of, no, that's not his true nature, and knowing that we are projecting our own beliefs onto God. And I wasn't realizing that I was doing that at first.
Right? God gives us free will. He's like, I'm here. And you also have your own mind, your own thoughts, your own, like, you can do whatever you desire. And we have practiced to feed the victim within ourselves. We have practiced that everything makes sense immediately. If this happens, it means this is why. And then I can relax and rest and be like, now I know. Right? This is why it's like something's happening. What's astrologically happening? So I have that comfort from my soul that like everyone's going through it right now, right? And the thing is that when we step on this path of walking with God more closely, things don't always make sense. One of my dear sisters, and I'm paraphrasing Nina, she said something along the lines of, God is working always for my good, but not always according to my preferences. And even in challenge and trials and tribulations and difficulty, can we access that trust that it is serving a higher purpose? Because walking with God always means the continuous refinement that he sends us through. And what that means is really he's often taking away that which is not supporting us, but we're so desperately trying to hold on, because often that's the things where we place external value on. Mm-hmm. And I had experiences around this in my business, for example, whenever I would move through kind of like an identity shift, something wouldn't work anymore. The ways didn't work while the new ways haven't emerged yet. And the confusion that we find ourselves in these moments of transition where this doesn't work, but the new thing isn't yet here. And the incredible discomfort of being in this liminal space of waiting, of simmering, of confusion, because we want to know. It's part of human nature. I want to know what's next. And to root into prayer in these moments so deeply, to know that this is for me. Whatever does not work is for me. God is taking something away in order for it to be more easeful, and looking back on the things that didn't work. Now, after a couple of years of space to that experience, I realized it was meant to be. I'm so grateful, because that I wasn't in my fullest alignment back then. I wasn't living, and this is the core piece, true to my design. God wants us as women to live true to our design, which means surrendered, trusting, relaxed, soft, receptive. In this, like my belly gets big every time I speak about this. that spaciousness, that exhale that we so crave, that's God's design for us as women. And so when we say, yes, I walk with you, God, and show me the way, he will show us the way to that place, to that state, to this way of living and being, which we so long for. But again, it's our patterns, it's our ways, it's our control. And so usually it's the things around control, around surrender, around sourcing our worth from external things like how much we make, our identity connected to who am I? I'm this, I'm that. So, man, profound path of refinement, continuous refinement. And this is not to be confused with there's always more healing to do.
Yeah.
Like we all know from being in the self-development world, like there's always more healing to do. If I overcome this, if I overcome that, that's not the narrative. God's way is truth. And there's always more healing to do is never enough. It's striving. The energetics are striving. It means there's something that's not yet here, not yet complete. I still have to reach somewhere in the future. And walking with God is, I have actually already arrived here. And that's a choice.
That brings spaciousness in itself, that knowing and that, yeah. And even just thinking about how, as I've been softening more into my feminine, how that actually feels so much better than trying to control and force and push and all these motives that I thought was serving me. And even I want to mention too, like during my breakup 6 months ago, it was like such deep grief and pain and suffering and just confusion. And then I remember I'm like, oh wait, I asked for like a really divine partner and husband, and I'm asking for these big things. So it's like remembering that I am being provided for in this moment, but I have to trust and surrender and be in the unknown and be in the confusion. And it's really hard practice of how to remind myself day in and day out and that this is what I asked for. So now I think that oftentimes too we get confused because we're like, why aren't I being supported? But the provision doesn't always look how you want it to look, which is what you touched on earlier too with what
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. I think this is the provision piece is, I think that's the deepest journey for human on this earth plane. Like that's big, deep stuff to trust that we are provided for, because it touches on the foundational layer of survival. I'm not provided for, I won't survive, I won't die. Like that is what gets activated in our systems when it comes to provision and trusting provision. So this is a highly complex piece. And I think in some ways a lifelong journey that I haven't mastered, that I'm continuously being invited into more deeply. Just recently around the accident, can I trust I'm provided for in this space? And it comes in those subtle moments, in those, like my health insurance now stopped paying, right? And I'm like, whoo, I feel it. I feel this like unpredictability of what's to come. How wide is this field of what's to come that I have to now pay? And that's the moments where we have a choice. The practiced way is control and contraction and fear and freak out or whatever. It's some form of contraction. And we want to honor the contraction that the body has a really big experience, the human. And beyond that, if I trust in the greater plan that God has for me, that everything he's orchestrating is serving something greater for me, and this very moment does too. And it either means he's going to provide in ways that I already know and expect, or it means he provides in ways that are completely unexpected. Usually the way God shows up is very nonlinear. The human mind has, it's this way or that way. Each problem has usually two paths. It's like, I could do this or I could do that. But that is always limited to what either I have experienced in the past, what I can envision based on what already happened, or what I can envision based on what I can dream of. And maybe I can really go so far in my dream imagination, and maybe I can stretch it to like here, but God operates way beyond you can't even see my hands. This is the field where God operates. And I truly believe that God is the only way who can work at the quantum field of miracles and acceleration and absolutely unexpected twists and turns that are in service to us.
100%.
And so these are moments of practice of like, okay, what do I choose? Who do I share this information with? Because every person has their own way of dealing with this, right? And kind of plants their little seeds of response in us. But what does my direct, straight connection to God reveal in these moments where trusting His provision is so hard? Because it's such an abstract concept initially, provision. Trusting I am provided for used to be so far away for me to even touch. It was like, yeah, sure, but who's going to pay my bills? Yeah, sure, but how is that going to happen? Yeah, sure, but where's my money coming from? And it was a gradual, patient journey to come to a place where it becomes a visceral, somatic body, like an actual state of feeling where it's not anymore mental. And I still have these thoughts sometimes. Doesn't mean we need to completely eliminate them, but we know how to return back to that place in our hearts, that place in our body. And that obviously, yeah, takes time and devotion, and relationship to God is always the feminine often, or I hear the feminine often say is like, well, why isn't God showing up for me? And we can have this sprinkle of entitlement when it comes to relationship to God, is He's not showing up for me. So, I mean, and just as a relationship to a human, it can only thrive and flourish when we truly spend time with this human and spend energy and create the space for togetherness. And it's the same thing for God. If we're unwilling to create the space, if we're unwilling to sit in the silence, in the discomfort of silence and spaciousness, if we're constantly filling our life with distraction, with stuff, it's hard to hear God's voice. And so it will always be a reflection of our willingness. And it doesn't mean that God only shows up if I create the time and if I pray enough, right? It's a fine line. It's not you have to pray and create your daily space and only then God will show up for you. That's not true. God always works for you, with you, through you. And this longing for God to feel God more deeply in our hearts and in our lives, it's to create that space. And I believe that relationship with God will illuminate where we are distracting. I often journal to God. It just feels more accessible for me to write it down, write my prayers down. So my whole journal is basically just have little letters to God. And I noticed the other day I was sitting down and starting to write, and my phone notification popped up, or I saw like hair in the corner on the floor, and I'm like, let me just clean it. Let me just quickly respond. And I was like, that's the thing. Like, this is it. These moments, how often are they happen? Like all the time. And can I sit in the discomfort of my phone wants attention and the hair in the corner that I want to clean up so bad because then I can relax? This is it. Like, this is so symbolic for the distractions in life. And it's hard sometimes to create that space, but it's a practice. And the more nourishment I receive from writing to God, or from breathing in the presence of God being with me, the more my system will remember how good that feels, and the more easeful this will become to create that daily.
Yeah, that practice. And we're always being invited to distract. So to really call your awareness and focus and just let it continue to unfold how it is. But it is, for me, such a practice, especially in the really challenging moments, to make the space to be with my body and make the space to drop in and connect. And there's so many times where I'm like being pulled. But when I do let go and I do drop, it's like, oh, okay. Like, it feels so good. But it's kind of funny how you have to go make it through that first initial, like, there's just the mind is so wants to stay busy, doesn't want to go in there, even though it's so safe in there. So it's interesting.
Yes. Yes. And we cannot bypass the body when we relate to God, meaning prayer alone is beautiful and nourishing, but the body has needs too.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of regulation that we find in prayer, and the body might still need a little bit more support. And simultaneously, if we work at the level of the body only, but we're not inviting God into that field, it will too be incomplete. And I personally found this integration coming from working with the body, feminine embodiment, sensuality. This is how my journey and my work began, as for many, many women on this path, is through the body, through sensuality. And it felt like almost this moving through the different layers, the root, the sacral, the sex, the eros, higher, higher, higher up. So we're getting to the heart. We're getting to unite all of us. And so now my work is less body, less eros, less sensuality. It is part of it very naturally and organically. It's not focus anymore because there comes an integration. And the body only part or part of my journey was needed to invite God into that space, to let God fill the places that I alone, through self-regulation, through practice, couldn't fill. And this is the piece around surrender and submission is, okay, God, I'm a human that is very limited in perception, in sight. And it doesn't mean that we put ourselves low and we make ourselves small, but we by nature are smaller than the Creator. Mm-hmm. And if we look back at our lives, if I look back 1 year ago, 6 months ago, I didn't know what was going to come. And doesn't it show how limited our perception is, and that there is a greater plan, because everything does make sense? Not necessarily in the moment, but looking back, everything only makes sense when we look back at life. It doesn't always make sense as we're in it. And that should be enough proof that, okay, I don't know. And there's a beauty there. It's not what you touched on in the beginning of like the feminine submitting where it wasn't rightful to submit, right? That is a different tone and frequency. And usually this is an opening that happens for women as they mature and as they root deeper into their womanhood. Because I believe that naturally the desire to surrender and submit comes alive in us more deeply as we move from more immature, maybe more maiden ways of being to our woman, into our woman, maybe even the mother archetype, without having to be a physical mother. It's more so like the nurturing qualities. Like she wants to surrender. She just wants to give in. She wants to soften in the presence of her man, right? The holding and frame of the partner, and both in the frame and holding of God. Like that's the kind of the image that comes is I'm in submission to God, he's in submission to God, and I'm in surrender and submission to the partner. And there's so much nuance there, obviously.
Yeah, but it feels so good. I wish that everyone gets to experience that and like somatically in their bodies. And then just like you said, and just the calmness that kind of becomes the state of being, not at all times, but like as you start to feel it so deeply in your body and you start to trust. And it's just, I'm so grateful that I've been able to get to this point in my life based on everything I've been through. And I just really hope that more women get to feel this, because you're so right. It is our design. Like this feels so much better. And I keep meeting women that when I share that I do like feminine work, they're like, oh, I think I need to be in my feminine more. I'm in my masculine all the time. And it's just, yeah, it's so normalized to be in our masculine. Now that's how society is, obviously, and how it's set up. So, but then it's just hard because it's like constant bashing on men. And yeah, there's just so much pain, I feel like. And I was at a sister circle last night, and it was just like, men this, men that, and the masculine this. And I was like, wow, people are really hurt and really like have such a bad vision of men. I was like, I love men. I like stood out. I was like, I don't think you guys have got it right. And they're like,
I love it.
yeah, it's just, yeah.
Yes. I love that you said that. I love men, and this is the foundation. We cannot attract, or beyond that, we cannot be in healthy relationship if there is that residue. So I feel like it's our sacred responsibility to clear, to harmonize, to do whatever it takes to move past what happened in the past. So every time there's a relationship closing, it is our responsibility to sit with the pieces that are ours and pray for the pieces that are in the field of the other. I've really come to this place where I've come to relate with, like, every man I meet, I see as a complete, clear, clean space. And I think this is the only, like, we have to at least try. We have to be so willing to truly see the other in their humanity, in their divinity. And I know it's hard because we naturally, humanly, we project what we experienced in the past often. If a situation repeats that has feels similar than in the past, if we're not aware, instantly a projection is playing out. And what has us be here, what has us be with the truth of what's actually happening, is our willingness to be in the body, and is our willingness to, as you say, love man and move past our past experiences. Yeah, similar, same piece to relationship with God is, and that is our maturity. This is how we grow from our immature ways of being to the mature woman in us. She's in all of us. She, if you're feeling for a moment, the mature woman in you, she has a very clear understanding of what's happening. She's like, this is the past and this is something new and fresh. And she's willing to choose meeting the new human with an open heart, and there's a lot of sensation that comes with, because the tendency will be to close and to protect. And again, if I trust a higher plan, if I trust God that he places every single person into my life for a specific reason, the ways we relate become different.
And we give space to, instead of just immediately, like you said, shutting off, it's like, well, what if I just asked a few more questions here and got to really know what they actually mean and what their actual intentions are, and what, like, in the past with my past partner, I would assume so quickly that he believed in this one belief, and he would look at me, he's like, why don't you just ask me what I actually believe? And I was like, I don't know, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And we just are so quick to do that. And if we could just like hold the space, even if we're feeling sensation or we're feeling like, oh, this is uncomfortable, can I see them and hear what their heart is saying instead of, like you said, projecting? So I think that's such a beautiful practice.
I think it's a true relational skill. It's a practice. We can only ever get good at it by practicing it, and by getting it wrong, and by trying again. And in order to be and meet the other from this place of curiosity, it also means that we have to be able to be with the bigness of sensation that comes when we're triggered. Because assumption follows after big sensation. There's something really big that what they just said or did activates in me. So it must mean that the pathway is already formed. We're already there in the projection, right?
Yeah.
And as we practice being with our breath, being with our bodies, with the information that our body is sending us, we're able to, instead of jumping, we're able to shorten the whole timeline and stay. And then there's a moment of choice. And usually it requires moving the sensation in some way, breathing through it. And whether that's audible and really big, or whether that really just happens and nothing is visible in the external, it's different moment to moment. But if I'm able to like breathe through my trigger and breathe through my urge and impulse to assume and be penetrated with my energy, if I sit with, okay, I have so much to say, and let me run the sensation through my body first and see what's left after. And that again is a practice, and I'm not always getting there right either.
Yeah, but the awareness of even just knowing that that's what's happening, I think is really soothing, because I didn't realize that was happening at first. And two, when you can get to a point where you just tell your partner, hey, I'm feeling something right now. Can we just pause for a moment? And them letting them involved in it, if you are in a safe relationship, which I hope you are, allows them to understand what's happening with you because they might not know. And then there's just so much safety that can be built when we realize that we have choice and a voice. And yeah, so beautiful. And I'd love to kind of dive into the path to union and finding a beloved in the physical form.
Yes.
Uncoupling or breakups do not need to be horrific and ugly, but they can be the most beautiful unwinding of a union. And you get to decide if you're going to let this heartbreak hold you back from love or open you wider to an even greater love and ability to choose yourself. And if you desire to shift this archaic way of ending relationships and instead be a leader in love, then I invite you to join my Holding Heartache Masterclass so you can remain in love, trust, and integrity with your heart. And this will be a powerful way to close out that chapter with your past lover, to somatically feel through the tough emotions and create a solid foundation of support to hold you through the process of grief and letting go. You'll get a clear, reliable, and comforting kit of resources and tools so that you never feel alone or stuck during this process. And I created this masterclass so you'll feel empowered to make it through the painful process and come out the other end anchored in truth and more rooted in love. I want to remind you that your heart isn't broken, you're being opened wider, and thus you're being able to feel more alive. So if you'd like to access the Holding Your Heartache Masterclass with me, Lexy Davis, head to the show notes and sign up.
Yeah, it's my favorite things to talk about. Yeah. You want me to just go?
If you feel like it, yeah, or I can guide, yeah.
Oh, yeah. The foundation, as I touched on in the beginning, will always be a relationship to God, because union, what true union or sacred union, there's so many terms for that, really means is placing God at the center of the relationship. And that means that both in some way have to be in devotion, in surrender, in submission to God's will. So the entire relationship becomes an expression and an emanation of God's will, what God wants for us both. And so if we're not strengthened in that relationship, it will be shown as we come together. And so the spaces I offer for preparation for union are not to heal more and overcome more relational stuff. It is to truly root into that relationship with God. So when we come together, there's already that foundation, because what gets activated when we step into relationship, all of our patterns after a while, right? All of the little girl that gets activated and has her needs. And the truth is that he won't ever soothe these parts. He won't ever be able to entirely fully hold our little girl. And that is when we have to let the fantasy die of, if one day my man comes, I don't have to feel all of these things. And I've held that for so long. And I think there's still a little part of me that's like, you know, and only God can do that. And only then we can have a healthy relationship, is when we know when to bring our hearts to God, because we cannot expect for the partner to hold us in those depths that only God can hold us in. And of course, there's so much nuance. And of course, it's involving the partner in our process and revealing those vulnerable parts. And yet, he's human, just as we are human. And it's only the godly love that can fill truly the deep parts that ache for that love, that we think the partner can fill. If he would just lead me better, if he would just be more masculine. But that's actually a cry for God.
Yeah, it's just wild that we don't realize that he's not there to save you and fix you and, you know, make everything go away. And how quickly are we like, all right, well, on to the next, because he couldn't do this. And I think that you might keep finding this the same thing because you are outsourcing. So I would love to hear about your thoughts on this love at first sight, knowing right away. And when you meet your man, like, how do you know that this is the man that God has brought to you?
I love this question. I also have a post on this saying, if we rest so deeply in God, we will know when the man of God stands before us. And I feel this does require some deeper explanation and insight. I believe that firstly, a man of God is a man who is living in submission to a higher will. Because if he's not, he's in submission to his ego. There's only these two paths. It's either God show me the way, or it's the ego choosing the way. There's nothing really in between. And that is felt. That is always felt, right? In the relationship, in the ways that you relate. And do we know? How do we know? Do we know love at first sight? Do we right away know? I love at first sight. Do we right away know if he's the one? I think it can be like that. There's many examples out there where people meet and they both immediately know. There's examples where one knows and the other is not yet quite sure. There's so many ways that we meet each other. And I don't think that it's only a union or a union rooted in God and meant to be if we immediately right away know. I think that's also placing a lot of pressure onto each other and the other. I think fantasy plays into that. It can be like that, but ultimately, being in union means being and relating to each other in our humanness. Mm-hmm. And it can mean that there's some layers of our human that we first need to move and work through together. It can mean that there is a strong pull and strong energy, and that there is some refinement that we have to do together. And the alchemy of the togetherness is initiating that. So, and then there are so many ways which I don't even know, because again, that's where God works. I don't know. But what's important for me and to me is that it's not that linear. It's not that you immediately know, or it's not that you have to grow into that. It's more so we're being given lessons and opportunities to grow and refine all the time, and to root deeper into love, and whatever that means. God decides for us and places that specific human into our fields and lives.
And if you are someone that's looking for a husband rather than just a short boyfriend, how do you kind of feel into if he is that?
If we speak in the terminology, would probably be moving away from dating and into courtship. So if you desire to be moving towards marriage and away from dating, from having short-term experiences, and you feel in your heart that you're truly ready to be more deeply devoted to love and to each other, it's to communicate it very openly, and isn't fully willing to reveal her heart and to reveal the fullness and transparency, because it's vulnerable, it's raw. It's like, oh, what if he thinks I'm too much, right? That's the piece that gets activated. A deep wound that the feminine holds is, what if I'm too much, too soon? And while there is something to say about revealing gradually and revealing our devotion gradually, not just sharing our deepest everything right away. So if you desire to move into marriage and move out of dating and moving from relationship to relationship, and really feel it in your heart and in just the depths of your soul that you want to walk the path of union and devotion to each other, and walk with God. And it's to really bring the most important questions right in the beginning of getting to know each other, and revealing very openly what you are available for and what not. And this is often where women get a little bit caught up in not wanting to be too much, and where our too much wound gets activated that the feminine just has so deeply. And in this phase of courtship, which is very different to dating, is kind of more of a casual term, and courtship is there is a container. There is already containment within the exploration phase, where there is already clarity. What are we moving towards? And courtship is just a different term for another term for dating, kind of more serious dating, where we already know, okay, it's we're vetting each other. We're checking each other out. We're feeling and getting to know each other to see, is this a match? Is this the person I want to spend my life with? And so through that, there is already much more containment. And this is such a core piece for women and the feminine, is to feel contained, is to feel that we are moving in the same direction. And I don't yet know, right? We still have to have our relationship with uncertainty and the bigness of sensation that uncertainty brings up for us. And yet there is a frame. There is something that holds us, that we can exhale into. And this is the thing with dating and with not really being very clear upfront what you're available for and what not, is it's very undefined. And there it's very difficult for us to know what is appropriate. How much do I open? Lovemaking, sex, what feels right and true for me if things are undefined. And this is when things can get very, very messy. And I think there comes a time in a woman's journey where that just doesn't feel satisfying anymore, where, as you also like to say, like, there's a readiness. I want to move towards marriage that is just crystal clear. And so being very transparent, and it's very different to revealing your whole deepest everything. There's a time and place for everything, and it's a practice to know, how much do I reveal? How much of my devotion and my opening feels appropriate for that moment? Not from he has to earn it. Again, I love men. We love men. We already assume the best. But what feels right and true in this moment, and that only your body can tell. Only your connection to God can tell. That voice of God within you, that is a compass moment to moment. And revealing that is very different to being clear and honest and transparent around, this is what I desire, and are we on the same page? And it can save us a lot of time and energy and heartbreak.
So much, yeah, being
It's
brave.
vulnerable. Like, this is the piece why, just to add, this is the piece why we don't do it. It's like, oh, maybe I can see, maybe there's another time I can say that, and maybe it just comes up naturally. Maybe he will bring it. But the thing is, we're not in our sovereignty. We're not exercising our own agency and erecting this part within us that is clear, that actually already knows what it desires. And it's our unwillingness to be in the raw exposure of vulnerability when we reveal that, when we share that, when we say, this is what I truly desire and what I want and what I know God wants for me. And to be in not knowing how he will respond, this is the true art. And this is what then creates a relationship that is in alignment with us. It's when we're willing to be with the immensity of the bigness. There's so much sensation in revealing your heart, not from the mind, not these are the things that I want. Are you ticking all my boxes? It's a very different way of communicating through the heart and through the truth of your soul. And that is a practice. And that's when I'm already losing the words to articulate, because it's such a visceral experience, right? I can speak from my mind, or I can speak from, it comes from a deep, deep place of knowingness, of soul.
Yes, our bodies are so beautiful in that way. And I love what you said, because we're scared of getting our hearts hurt. But it takes that bravery of really being open and vulnerable and saying what you want and leaning in and figuring out together. And I'm curious your perspective on when do you feel if, like, you're staying in it too long and or is it something we just need to work through, or is this not working?
Well, I would need a more specific example to, like, really respond to the case, but generally, usually we have a sensing and a feeling, and usually we're unwilling to listen. And if we look back to our past relationships, we already kind of sense when it wasn't working. And usually there's just our fear at play. And this is our reflection of our true trust in God's plan for us. Like, that's the moment. And it means saying no to amazing men. It means saying no to incredible men. It means saying no to men with a lot of potential. And it means saying no to men who bring more than the previous man. And this is where it gets very tricky for us, because when we as women in our heart have the experience of, like, wow, he's the first one who showed up in this way, he's the first one who did this or who did that, what gets activated is, what if there's nothing better out there? But if there's misalignment in other ways, that is my reflection of my true trust and relationship to God, is, can I be in the fire of saying no when that truth comes to me, and be in such deepening with God to know that he's refining me, so I'm able to recognize again when a man of God comes into my life that he truly has for me. And it's hard to hold that waiting stage. I've touched layers of longing. Oof. I feel the past couple of years, I even had a masterclass, I think 2 years ago, on longing, because it's such an important state and experience for us women to be with the different layers that longing has. And that is the refinement. This is why God doesn't give us what we want when we want it, is so we can feel the depth of that longing, that beauty, the deeper layer of our woman, it's our descent as women, meaning into the depths of our own wombs, of our cervix, that rich void that we cannot touch if we just get what we want all the time. And it doesn't mean that we're meant to suffer or we're meant to go through hardship in order to get what we want. It's not that either. It is being with what is here, and there's always something so potent in what God is delivering right here.
Yeah, the holding, the longing. That's so big. That's another huge sensation to hold and to be with, and to notice the anxiety that comes and the fear and the thoughts and the age. I hear that so much. And yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that longing, and the wanting kids and the mother and all of that. And that's just what, like you've mentioned multiple times, the trust and the timing for you is just, we're always being redirected into that. And luckily, I don't know how, I feel like I've always really had that within me. But I at times I'm currently single, so I'm obviously still craving it, but deep in my heart, I know so clearly. But I hear so many women who actually have a genuine fear of not believing at all. And yeah, that's why that trust is so needed.
And I think that's just our own like tender journey in the intimacy just with God, to bring these fears to God and to say, God, I had these moments where I was like, God, do you even have a man for me? I've held that knowing so deeply in my heart for so many years. I was like, of course he's out there. Of course he's out there. And I hit a point where I was like, wait, like, do you even have someone for me? And I realized, wow, that's another layer of my longing here that has more of a hopeless texture. And I'm like, ooh, and it sent me into a void and a death, and really sitting with that. Can I trust that God is still working for me, even if he would not bring a man into my life? And if I zoom out, I'm like, no, of course. But it's important to go there. It's important to bring these deep, present questions to God as well, and let him fill the space.
Yeah, not being afraid to share anything and everything that's on your heart.
This is the complete opposite to law of attraction, of like, you shouldn't do the negative thing, think the negative thing, speak it out, because then it will become reality. And while there is truth to our words carrying energy, it's actually quite healthy to sometimes speak out the very thing I do not want, to speak out my deepest fear. It's different to indulge in it and get kind of swept like into the depths and the darkness with it. But to speak and then give it to God will not make that become reality. It's releasing it out of your system and saying, can you hold this for me? I don't have to hold this on my own. God, can you hold this for me? Can you support me in that? I give this to you. I cannot figure this out. I give it to you because I trust you will do this for me, move this for me and with me.
Yeah, that support is so beautiful. And the truth, yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I mean, during this breakup, I was like, all right, I'm going to feel every single fear. I'm going to feel this. I never let myself feel the fear of not having my own children, because I had, like you said, I had such a deep knowing. I was like, that's not going to happen. But when I went there, it was like, oh, it felt good to just know that, to feel that, and to acknowledge that there is a truth in that, and that is a part of us. So, but then people so quickly can get stuck in it. So how did you yourself navigate that?
You mean these deeper layers of
Well, I guess like I haven't experienced getting stuck. Like I can bring it and not get stuck. So but I know a lot of people do get stuck. So what do you tell someone that is getting stuck in that fear?
It's usually we miss the point when the emotion has already moved through. Usually sensation that comes from emotion, or a mix. Usually whatever is coming up, a fear, pain, let's take the example of, what if I will never have my own children, or what if my man will never come into my life? It comes with sensation. Usually it's kind of like a closure somewhere, or maybe a pulsing of the solar plexus, or the heart gets tight, or maybe the belly gets really contracted. If we are with the sensations of the body and breathing into that, maybe tears come, And usually it is so short that a wave moves through us. It's maybe like 45 seconds, maybe a minute. There's scientific stuff around that. And the moment we get stuck and drown is the moment that we're like, oh, remember back then in childhood, or my last partner, he did this or that, is the moment we're dissociating from the physical sensation, from the body, from what's actually happening here, from being with the tears and letting the tears flow and being present and being in this room and in this body, to we go somewhere else and then we continue. So the practice would be to stay as much as I can here, feel your feet. Maybe you want to massage your thighs, and like fully, if you're fully with the sensation, you're like, I'm done. I don't even want to go there anymore. It's like, it's occupying a lot of space. So naturally, it's a practice. And of course, this is ideally to be practiced with someone who is experienced in that, to guide into these spaces. So we can learn how this feels to guide ourselves eventually.
Yes. Oh, yay, so beautiful. And what is one thing a woman can do to be more open to her own journey of the timing and the trust? Like, besides just saying to trust in God. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's just so layered and such a patient journey. I think it's nothing we can accelerate, which goes against like all of this like quantum jumping and quantum leaping and quick fixed mentality that so many, that our world reflects all the time. We have quick solutions for everything, and relationship to God and forming trust is nothing that we can rush and just manufacture and get to. It is a journey, and it is this is why relationship to God will always initiate us deeper into our womanhood, because it will show us where we are unwilling to be with the very thing that is here, with impatience, with I want it to be quicker and I'm frustrated and anger. All of that is calling us into the deeper layers of actually feeling it. And so, yeah, I think the moment we send out that prayer and we say, I want to walk with you, God, the path of truth and the path of devotion and of the heart and of love and union, this is where God is. He will reveal himself more deeply to us in this space.
And for a woman who has a hard time hearing God, if she's like, I'm showing up, I'm on my knees, I'm praying, I'm doing these things, and I'm not hearing him or hear God.
Sometimes it's hard to discern between the voice of fear and trauma and the voice of God. And again, it's a practice. It's cultivating that connection. It's cultivating that relationship. It's opening, it's journaling, it's reading, it's being in the space to start forming that pathway. And again, this might take time. And I sometimes don't hear God as well. It doesn't mean that God speaks to me clearly through downloads, through this is what you do and that is what you do. It is not like that. And this too is calling us forward into, can I trust this relationship even if I'm not directly and immediately getting something from it, right? It illuminates where we are operating from this extractive nature of like, I'm praying, I'm doing the things, I'm on my knees, why am I not hearing God? Right? Is still that expectation, that extractive piece of like, I'm doing it, so I want something from it. But can you trust that God is even working in the spaces where you don't see and feel it? That he's always for you, walking for you, like so excited to support you. And it's not always linearly felt in immediate feedback and response. And again, this is a maturity piece, is to say like, I'm in it. I'm here and I'm in it. Even if I have periods where I doubt God or God's path for me, even if I have periods of challenge where I'm like, why is this happening? This doesn't make sense. Even then, and again, there's such a relational parallel here, right? The devotion and commitment to, I'm staying here. I'm willing to keep pouring love here and keep feeding and nurturing this bond. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so beautiful to that practice. And that's been a really hard one for me. But then it's like you said, it's like, oh, I'm expecting something directly in return. That's not healthy, not healthy, but it's just not what this relationship is about. So yeah, holding that space too is, and also it's just a time to like, maybe it's just time to slow down a little and to rest and to to be in the not knowing, which is obviously most of the relationship is the unknown. He is the unseen. So yeah, to me,
Right.
it's like we don't get to know at each moment of every time. It's like just because you're tapped into God, it's like he's not just on speed dial, you know?
Right. And in a way he is, right? We can also feel the immediate like
And
sensation when we do turn to prayer, when we're like, God, I need you right now. Like even that in itself has an immediate effect. But yeah, as you're saying, it is it's a patient journey that like relationship to God, deepening with God has shown me so profoundly where I'm in distraction, where I'm trying to fill the void, where I'm unwilling to be in the nothingness. And usually like a lot is being revealed there. A lot is being revealed. But if we're constantly on the go, distracting, doing things, even if it's beautiful things, sometimes a call from my mom can be the distraction, right? It's even the beautiful things can be distraction and calls us into refining our way of being with all the pieces that life comes with. Like so many things we're juggling all the time. And it's usually in the still space. It's in the resting, like active rest versus, yeah, I'm resting, but I'm kind of secretly still like kind of obsessing over all the things I'm not doing right now. So it's not true active rest or right. And noticing the tendencies, the urges to do and being with the sensation. Like this is where we invite God to work us more deeply, because behind the urge is also a belief that I have to do this, otherwise something bad happens, or I have to do this because otherwise I'm not sustained, or I'm not this identity, this person I portray to be. Like there's a lot in those moments of silence.
so beautiful. Yay. Thank you. So the last question of the podcast is, what is one of your favorite romantic memories?
Oh wow. Ooh. Oh, so many. Wow, I didn't expect that one. Let me just drop in for a moment. Favorite romantic memories. What just comes is just driving through nature, just majestic, beautiful mountains and forests. And like, there's something so beautiful to be contained in the car and like see the majesty that's around, like God right here, and being in togetherness and the comfort and coziness of being together. Like that to me is just, yeah, it's maybe not like super romantic as in like,
Oh,
yeah.
I love nature, so I agree. Yeah. Oh, I could use some mountains right now. That'd be so nice. Yes. Thanks for sharing, and would love for you to let them know how they can work with you or connect with you.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Portal to Grace. And I do offer spaces for one-on-one work. They're quite lengthy and deep and profound in time, which means six months together. That's the containers I offer. And I'm also offering a group space, which is called Contained, which is a 5-month journey into deepening a relationship with God and truly becoming God's beloved first before we can unite and be with the beloved. And it's also a space that is open for women who are in union and who are in a relationship or in the early moments of relationship, because this is work that never ends and never stops. This is always so relevant for us to continuously be in that deepening with God and in that holding with God and what that reveals and how that enriches the relationship. So yes, this is a space that starts early February, and yeah, got so early bird price running until the 10th of January. So that's very, very recent and potent and just so beautiful. So yeah, reach out if you feel curious. And thank you so much, Lexy, for this beautiful recording and just the time we got to spend.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited for this, and what a beautiful way to wrap up this year and start the new one. You made it to the end of the episode, so now it's time for our snuggly heart breath of the day. Place a hand or both hands, if it's safe to do so, over your heart and take a big breath into your heart center. Open your mouth and let it go. I'm so grateful to have shared this time with you. If you enjoyed this combo, please share with your besties and your fam. And if you're a visual person like me, fly over to YouTube and watch the video. If you want to do a random act of kindness today, please leave a 5-star review so more people in the world can get their heart snuggled. You're helping tremendously when you do this, so thank you so much. And as a gift for doing so, I'll give you my Soften Your Heart Medi that feels like an exhale and a hug from within. When you leave a review and email me the screenshot to heartsnuggles@alivetoenjoy.com, you can also find the email in the show notes and you'll get the free meditation. Sending you the warmest, comfiest hug and lots of unexpected blessings your way. Remember that every single person just wants to be loved. So how can you be loved today?